Just in the nick of time, boys. Welcome to League Teams once again. Before I introduce you two bozos, Brenton Sanderson, welcome.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Well, we can kick straight off into what I would like to see this weekend. Apart from your good self right here, I hope Paul Roos, after 10 hours of working on this show, can really recover on his holiday, because he must be just spent. I hope he comes through with the goods. But welcome to the show anyway.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm looking forward to the next hour.
That's what he's looking forward to. What are you looking forward to?
Oh, well, not because I'm a Hawk person, but I'm looking forward to a back-to-back win. The Hawks. Everyone's put them down and can't make the finals. Cargo hit at the airport. Everyone's talking finals. We're not talking about that. We just need back-to-back wins.
I'm looking forward to seeing if West Coast can handle a 4.5 hour flight to the Gold Coast. They haven't been able to handle 3.5 to Melbourne. So whether or not they can go to the Gold Coast and get the job done over them, and I'm not sure whether you think they can.
We'll get the trench shovels out later and dig right into that one.
Okay.
I want to start straight off. Young Fasolos have run into a bit of strife. How does a player bring that to the surface? Does he actually put the hand up and say, guys, I'm struggling here, or does the medical fraternity, he's out now with depression, does the medical fraternity look at him and say, you've got some issues, come and chat to us, and then they inform you? How does somebody at a club level find out they've got depression? Because from the outside, we look at him and think, he's a happy sort of fella. He loves his footy.
Yeah, it's a really challenging one, and it's not unique to AFL footballers, young AFL footballers. We're seeing a lot in the community as well. And to Alex's credit, I think, for the courage to come out and openly talk about it, and we saw with Buddy Franklin last year, missing the finals campaign with the Sydney Swans, and as a club we were notified of it yesterday, and from what we were told, Alex has been struggling mentally for a short period of time, and a conversation with the doctor after the game last weekend. It was important that Alex needed to just step away from footy, from everything related to footy, hopefully for a short period of time. And in his own words, he thinks he would just be like a short break. But as I said, the industry's been great. I think the last 24 hours we've seen a really mature approach from the industry in this, and hopefully encourages more young men to come and openly talk about some of the mental demons they're facing.
Can only assume, Sando, the heightens of AFL footy now and the pressure. But when you have something off the field that you're dealing with, and then that focus on a weekend, if you're not playing well, obviously that escalates. So credit to him, because I did a bit of work with him last year. He's a good kid, free spirit, needs the head clear. So I wish him all the best. But the challenges right now on these young men's pretty high.
Yeah, the expectations now, and we see now how much the players are very much in the spotlight, and that's okay, because a lot of them crave that. You wouldn't enter the industry, or you wouldn't play AFL football unless you dreamt of kicking a goal at the MCG in a grand final. And unfortunately, there's a lot of other things that go with becoming a professional athlete and being a successful AFL footballer. And unfortunately now the feedback's very direct, and we're seeing through social media platforms now that players are very much under the spotlight, and sometimes you just can't quite handle everything that goes with your football career. But it's the stuff away from football too that we've got to be notified of, I guess, and that it's not just you see the players play for those 3 hours every Saturday. There's a lot of other stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So like we said, we wish him all the best. I hope he gets well soon. But it just hopefully is the little trigger that allows a lot of young men, throughout Australia, just in football, outside of football, to come forward and see their GP and have a mature discussion about it.
I won't say covered up, but at club level, I mean, it's got nothing to do with playing in the AFL, although the pressures are there. But young men, they're their own beasts, and it can happen to somebody who's playing out of suburban as well. So it's not unique just to AFL football. So.
Well, I think what's important, our generation when we played, it was a sign of weakness, and we've moved a long way past that now. This is an illness that needs attention, and I'm sure this is going to be I'm sure this will be an opportunity for a lot of young men who just feel like they just can't quite get over, a mental health challenge, that they can go and see their GP and have a mature discussion about it.
Is that the change then? Is that the skill set within a football club? Yes, the GPs can point in the right direction, which is a great tool, but sometimes coaches aren't equipped to deal with situations like this. So you may need, is that the next step with department spend, where it's looked at and stuff like that? Do we need an increase in that to allow people within all football clubs at various levels to help with young men and women playing our game that may suffer.
Yeah, you're right, and exactly right, Jono. I think we, not just coaches, but all of us, we make the error sometimes is that we think we can give advice.
That's right.
When we're not properly educated on those sort of things. And in these situations, it's better just as a coach, as a friend, to say you need to go have this discussion. And that's the best thing we can do as a good mate, is offer that sort of support.
Back in the day, yeah. Got kicked in the butt a few times for feeling a bit down on yourself, you know. So, yeah, we wish young Alex all the best, and his team's taking on Fremantle. How are you planning for them this weekend?
Just roll out the game plan, Sando.
Yeah.
Well, I think you have to acknowledge that what we saw last week against the Crows was a one-off. They got beaten by 100 points.
Yep. And it was in blizzard conditions as well.
That's right, yeah, which makes it even more unique. But looked at them pretty closely already. We play them on Sunday across in Perth, but they've won 6 of their previous 7 games leading into this. So that's a side that's in form. You know, Ross has really turned their fortunes around. I love some of their kids, you know, and I think the Brad Hill trade to get him there has been instrumental. He's been giving him excellent speed outside the contest, which is an issue.
Placed a lot of stock in him, haven't they?
Yeah.
They have, but he's been playing really well. And as I said, I've looked at a lot of Fremantle this last couple of days, and his outside run has been critical.
Brodie Grundy's back playing great football for yourself. He'll come up against a likely inclusion in Sandlands. If that comes up, do you just let Brodie go head-to-head with him early, because he is in great, especially when the ball hits the ground, Brodie's away actually having a fair impact.
Well, Brodie Grundy's had a great season,
hasn't he?
And he'd be in the discussion around All-Australian ruckman at the moment. But we know Sandlands is so unique. He's not just tall; he's the tallest player in the competition, but he has got that strength too, and you can jump into him. And now without the third man up rule, you can't have those tactics about.
And the bounce, I reckon Sandy's the one going, nah, throw it up.
Yeah,
of course
he knows where it's going. If it bounces a little bit away, he can't get that 125 kilos over there to it. So he wants it
Or the
thrown
size
up.
20 slipper.
With some of those big-bodied mids in there too, you know, with Mundy and Fife, they're the 192, 193 centimetre midfielders too. So you've got the tallest ruckman hitting to a couple of the tallest midfielders. So we'll have to be at our best around the contest. And you're right, Jono, with Sandlands. He's a unique proposition to try and prepare for.
So the forward line is starting to function really well. Last year it was always, is Billy going to come back? Jamie Elliott, is he going to be there? Now he's back. He's playing that traditional full forward role, which is releasing Darcy more a little bit. And you can see Darcy just throwing himself at everything. But the way he's controlling the forward line, we showed Sir Vision a couple of weeks ago, he's isolating himself. It's great to have some leadership down there, but the way he's playing that traditional full forward role is pretty good.
Yeah, and Darcy Moore, we've got to keep reminding ourselves, this young man's 21 years of age, you know, he's got such a bright future, but to be, I guess, the kingpin there in that forward mix at the moment, he's the only player at the moment above 6 foot in our forward line. We've gone with a smaller, more dynamic sort of look the last couple of weeks, which has worked for us at times with Elliott and Fasolo. Young Jordan De Goey's been playing some good footy there, and we've been rotating a few more mids through that sort of higher half forward roles. But I think that's the way the industry's going, you know, with a lot more.
So the Bulldogs
sort of
did last week as well. Can I ask you then? And there's always noise in the media, and we've talked, and I've said as well, and I think Dicko's said it in the past as well. Educator, you have a senior citizen. There's no real senior citizen in the Collingwood forward line to say to young Moore, that's not quite right. Start over here, move that way, do this, start back, play behind, play in front. Just instructing me. Have you missed a little bit of an educator down there?
Well, I think, and Dicko mentioned it before, Jamie Elliott has been somewhat of a missing link, I think, for our forward line. He didn't come into the side until, I think, round 3.
Missed a couple
or maybe round 4, and then only had a 60% game time in that week. But he's kicked bags of 3, I think, 3 weeks.
3 threes and a 4.
And then a 4 last.
And got himself started with one on the line. Did you mind that?
Yeah,
when he took that one there, or did you want him to block?
No, we went through that in his review. There's been a couple of times he said he's made the error where he hasn't taken the mark and his opponent's just got a fingernail in.
I'm glad he marked it. Don't worry. Another player who's going well for you as well, Sando's Daniel Wells. I think he's settled in well, and I think he's been in the last couple of weeks a really good link for that 45 kick back inside the corridor, because you look at the way Treloar plays a bit and Pendlebury. I mean, we watch the Stars all the time and try and monitor the way that they play their footy. They like corridor runs, save their legs a little bit at times, and I think this kick back into the middle to Daniel Wells is an important one. One, it may help those guys get really dangerous ball. You're driving it inside 50, but whenever Wells gets it, it stays in your hands. So that's a real positive.
Yeah, he's all class without question, and we didn't get much of a pre-season out of Wells. He had some injury setbacks during the summer, but now that he's got a bit of match fitness and he's up and going, we've seen how important he's going to be for our side going forward. You're right, Jono. He's a great decision maker. He rarely wastes a possession, and he's going to become, I think, a really important cog. To add to, Treloar, Pendlebury, Adams, Sidebottom,
right.
you throw Wellesley in there, pinch hit through him through the midfield and wings, and you can even play him at half back at times as well to give you a bit of run and punch. So I think he's going to be a really important.
You can understand the excitement in Sando's voice when you start reeling off some of those names.
But
and
it's
how well they're
amazing,
going.
isn't it, with Wells? Like you say, he hasn't done a pre-season. He's made that many deposits over the years, over his 12 years. He's starting to... The withdrawals are coming now.
That's
but
right.
He wouldn't blow a candle out the way he was moving last week. So the conditions there, but you're 100% right with the moving line. So that added 45 and opening the game up has really released what we just spoke about with the forward line.
Yeah, and it's important that you understand, so you can only attack as well as what the opposition defends you at times as well, and we've played some sides this year that have defended us really well. We've just got to keep, and you look at the industry too now, there's a lot more, it seems like there's a lot more risk taken now in offence. The defensive numbers haven't changed much over the last
The attacking
12 months.
defender is almost king these days.
That's
isn't
right,
he?
and
Yeah.
you see a lot of those successful top 4, sort of top 6 sides at the moment have got a lot of run and punch out of their defence. And
I want to ask you about one of those attacking defenders. You've got some boys in there that have only been in for the last 40 games or so, and I've circled one, Maynard. I think he's a bit more of a weapon than people realise. Hoskin Elliott's come down back down from GWS, and he's an offensive running weapon. And of course, Phillips is finding the form that he showed from his first game last year. So you've got 3 young blokes there, predominantly playing midfield back half, that are all attacking defenders / midfielders.
Yeah, and I think what's common with those 3 players is they're really hard-working, hard-running type of sort of half-back wings, midfielders, and they certainly straighten us up. And it's good to see those young men in form, and they're not household names yet, but I think Collingwood fans will be starting to really sort of
I
see...
like Maynard as a player. I reckon
He's tough too, Dan.
Yeah.
He plays with a lot of courage. He runs straight
striking left
lines,
foot.
and he's a left footer.
Yeah.
He actually hits the scoreboard too.
We might poach him at
that...
Hawthorn.
Yeah, we're a chance.
So, Sando, the couple of thousand Collingwood supporters that go, majority will be watching on Fox Footy, of course. Do they look forward to that sort of matchups with, say, a Hill on one wing for Fremantle, then you've got a young Phillips who might go to him at times, or Hoskin Elliott who's got
Wilbur.
more experience,
Just
Wilbur,
Yep.
to play that sort of role and try and own the wings there at Domain?
Yeah, and it presents a unique opportunity for us because you don't get to play at Subiaco very often, and we know that ground's longer but more narrow. So how do we have to adjust our attacking strategy, and does it help our defence structures too? So, I mean, they're what we'll go through tomorrow with the players. We'll prepare them as best we can, and we have to be ready for some of their exciting young players too. I really like Lockie Weller across half back, and Blakely's been playing some important roles for him. Walter's more midfield time. So yeah, this is a really good, much improved Fremantle side. If you forget about what happened to him.
Yeah,
last
so it's a much more than just worrying about yourself now with Fremantle. You mentioned the stars of Fremantle, but the outside star, the younger type players are starting to have an impact.
Yeah, and we're starting to see, a lot more of those younger players get opportunities. I really like Darcy Tucker, Hughes, Gray,
There you go.
Ali Balak.
There's the best 10 that can
kids
go
coming
through the midfield.
That's right.
It's good rotation.
And I don't know the difference between any of them. They're all the
They
same
all do,
player to
don't
me. Hey, let's move on to the next game now. North Melbourne take on Richmond. You and I were watching. We were in Alice Springs, and we saw the Tigers play last week. And there was a stage when Greg Chappell was out of form. And when it comes to striking the ball, Jack Revolt is as good a striker of the footy as anyone we've seen, but he kicked it horribly on the weekend.
He did, and we were sitting there, and it wasn't just one kick, it was 3, and they were in front and pretty direct. And you can see, this is from round 1, this shot. Look where his foot finishes. So up near his sort of shoulder height. His previous
Pointed toe.
two didn't go past his hip height. So it was almost like, I don't know whether he's changed it by design. I'll be intrigued to see how he goes this week. But 3 shots.
Sometimes you get an action wrong and it affects.
Well, it was
But
like...
that's the good one. See that
That's the
pointed
good
toe?
one. Yeah,
Yep.
see, it's almost at shoulder
Yep.
height. If we can go back to the first 2, I'm putting pressure on the control room down there.
That's
But
a
you'll-
no.
Yeah, you'll know. But you'll see, very similar to a golf swing. Very similar to a golf
Okay.
swing. Yeah, watch this. Watch where his foot finishes. See, it's sort of hip height.
And
He's
you
sort of
see-
stabbing at it with a bent leg.
The thing I noticed of him too, and I'll stand up. You get me? Grab. He chased the ball. So you come in and you go to kick and you run, you move the ball around, and then when you drop, you bring it down over the right leg. He dropped and pushed and dropped it pretty well straight down here. So he chased it to the inside with his foot, came that way, and to compensate that one you just showed then, he's turned his foot a little bit, because these blokes are so good. They make micro adjustments like that, and he chased it with the instep of his foot. Consequently, he's hitting it, bang, that way. Have a ball.
Well, that's right. That's where we all love that forward craft. You're doing the forward line and that goal kicking and the technique around it. And my aspect of it is the plant foot, and that's where I've been sort of doing a little bit of work recently. Because you look even sometimes at jacks, the plant foot's a little bit off. So I'm using my hands here as a bit of a guide. But if your plant foot's a little bit off, there's only one way your hips can go, and that's going to follow your plant foot. Plant foot straight, you'll come through straight. Even if you need to adjust it a little bit.
Where your foot's,
yeah. So if your foot's adjusted either way, your hips are going to follow that plant foot. So that becomes just as significant for your first strike, because as you're going into your kick, that hits first. Then all the other parts that you're talking about come into play with it. So that's why it's so much work needs to be done on these guys. And Jack Riewoldt said the other week, did 400 kicks this week, and he came out and kicked brilliantly.
Yeah, he did.
That weekend. So when they've got the time, we know they're putting the work in, but it's just not consistent enough, I think, throughout the season because of loads and days breaks and all these things.
So I'd be intrigued to know if that's by design. So he definitely finished shallow on his kick, I thought, to his hip side. So if he can get that up a little bit more, if Jack's watching. But just watching it, we didn't have any sound because we were a fair way from the telly, but it was
kind of good.
It was quite good, yeah. We couldn't hear what the commentators were saying, but...
Brian was saying, start it here.
Yeah.
That's the result.
Yeah.
But,
And I'll put my invoice in when you come and knock on my door.
Hey, go.
One thing I would ask you three, who are all champion goal kickers, though, did you feel anxiety before you're having a set shot? Because it's amazing now the players, as we talked before about the feedback, but they actually don't want to take the shot.
Brilliant.
They don't want to take the shot.
It's 100% right. And
Which
the
is
best
interesting,
part,
isn't it?
early in my career, I got really nervous. And I always said to myself, I've got to clear my head at the top of the runway somehow. So I used to turn to the midfielders and say, get back to the middle, don't worry about a zone. So automatically my energy was, right, it's positive. And that's sort of exactly what you're talking about.
You just build confidence, and you build confidence that I'd minimise the disaster. Early on, I was disaster going, you do the work, and I did a big program with Rob Kerr, who now is at Essendon. He came through and did some stuff at the Dogs with us and Brian Taylor, and minimise the disaster. So if I just missed, I knew that, it's not too bad. You know what I mean? You're okay. Next one, you had full confidence to go back and kick it.
For the answer to that, I reckon every goal I saw go over my head or stood side onto a teammate while they was kicking, I looked at it and went, I wish that was me.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's a pure forward, though. That's the creativity, and that's if you look at world sport, golf, the free throw in basketball.
Take the shot.
Take the shot. And in the arcs, but like in the go zone, the heart rate climbs. When they're outside and not expected to kick, just drops a little.
How do you change that mindset these days? Back to you as a coach.
Yeah, we're going to answer this one quickly, otherwise this will be a whole show about goal kicking.
Well, one of the challenges now is replicating match anxiety at training, which is very difficult to do. So that's one of the challenges for us. We set up a lot of competitions. We try and fatigue players before they have set shots.
The Cluggies put the headphones on as
back
well.
in the day, didn't he? Yeah.
Hey, speaking of goal kicking, Waite and Brown.
Yep.
Big weapons for North Melbourne as well. And when they're playing, these two boys, so there you go, you see it on there, 28 wins, 9 losses, 76% win rate, as opposed to when, not both, but when one of those two misses and breaks up the duo, 3 wins, 17 losses, 15%. It's a startling statistic, that one.
Well, when they play together, we mentioned it last, they complement each other so well. Like, I think he's more a lateral leader, Waite, and we know Big Ben Brown, but we'll ask you, Sando, the pressure that they apply, take their footy skills from a forward perspective out of it, their pressure that those two apply as big boys is pretty intense.
I was really surprised when I looked at the numbers because, Brown's kicked, I think, 27 goals or something ridiculous this year, but it's also Brown and Waite play as smalls when the ball hits the ground. They're actually just as dynamic and dangerous when the ball hits the ground as well, whereas a lot of key forwards are one effort in the air and you don't see them when the ball hits the ground. But it's a little bit like the model of West Coast, with Darling and Kennedy, who are great at applying defensive pressure as well. We're seeing that with these two. When Waite and Brown are in the forward line, it's very hard to get it out of there.
Hello, Robbo.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Robbo. How you going, mate?
I'm good,
He's a star.
What about Matty Cruiser then?
I love Cruiser's game, and the thing, it spoke how good Cruiser was, but it also spoke about North Melbourne's midfield. Fantastic in-tight players. But what I noticed in this, if we look at the lab work now, is that once Cruiser was able to get the ball to the outside of those 7 other opposition players, he beat every North Melbourne player to the outside of the square. There's 4 opposition players in there, 3 of them are underneath on ballers, and he's able to beat them out. Same again, watch this. And then we have a look at the North Melbourne players. He leaves them in his wake.
Well, Zeeble did the right thing there in some ways, came away around a sweep, but then had to go up to Graham for the smother, and then once that wasn't affected, off to the races for the Carlton boys. So North need to have a good look at that, because Cochin will get out of there, Martin will get out of there,
Yep.
Prestia. These guys get out with
It's a big
with
tick
some
for
sort of
Cruiser
speed.
too. I mightn't just say it doesn't all fall just on North Melbourne. Cruiser's in really good form.
It would be an area of concern, though, for North Melbourne, because they are scoring from stoppage. They're ranked 3 in the competition, but they're 17th at scores against from stoppage. So it's a little bit of Russian roulette.
Yeah.
How'd you enjoy the first segment?
It's good fun, thank you.
All right, let's go to a break.
Hump Day on Fox Footy just got a little better.
Kicked the last 4 points of...
That was the day Jesse White got excited, ran on the ground. There were 19
19
players on the
fans.
ground.
So you couldn't even win it, you had 19 on the ground.
Couldn't even win
And
it
they
with
reckon you're a
19.
great coach.
For the next 5 weeks, Derm and Roosie come to you a day early.
I couldn't help but smile then. Brucey said, but don't know whether you tag a defender. Didn't Mark Neal tag you as a centre back and held you to what? Nothing?
Well,
0-1?
No,
Or-
I had 4 that day, but I think I kept him to 7. I was a defender, mate. I was a close checking defender. Never gave an inch, as you blokes well know.
But you're waiting for Wednesday.
League teams with Derm and Roosie on Wednesdays in the boss's office. Fox Footy.
And don't we hope Roosie's having a wonderful break up there. Probably studying in the Yaffle.
Yeah, he's up watching
up
some Yaffle
north.
games.
Yeah, and that'll take in the GWS seconds team if he does that. But they take on Essendon this weekend. And we see Scully, Johnson and Lobb are all listed as tested and look to be reasonable.
Heard Leon
for
Cameron
their
on the
chances.
radio on the way in tonight saying Stevie J's probably highly unlikely and may
Yeah?
miss another one
Okay.
after that. So you could probably
really?
put a texter through him for 1 to 2 more.
Is that to
And-
do with the fact that he was
No,
holding
to
the
do-
crownie at the celebration?
Yeah, no,
Last
he
weekend?
he was in pretty good form, but that's okay, as they should be celebrating that.
Yeah.
No, just with the knee, of course.
The GWS team, the one thing we still can't get away from is they still don't have a pressure forward.
Have we
And-
brought this up every week?
I know, but the Eagles weren't able to exploit that either. So that's one thing they need to do. Their makeup. I mean, the Giants have got that many out, and they keep winning. They have 3 talls, then they, through injury, then they end up with 2 talls. What, as an opposition coach, would you fear more?
Well, they're one of the, I guess, the rare teams now that structure up with 3 genuine tall forwards. So you see with Cameron, Patton and Lobb. So at times, we mentioned it before about Waite and Brown, their ability as talls to be able to lock the ball in and provide defensive pressure. But this has been a unique year for GWS because it's always been a strength of theirs, the ability to be able to pressure every rebound. But for whatever reason, they're ranked a lot lower this year. But once again, I've heard Leon Cameron say he's a 3 tall forward man. He likes that as his structure.
Said that consistently, hasn't
With
he?
Toby Green, there is that damaging sort of small as well. Devon Smith. So it looks like it's a structure that is going to be sustainable for him, and that's the way that his philosophy is. But there's sides that play with 2 small with 2 talls, and obviously we talked before about Collingwood. We've had success the last couple of weeks.
I think
with
that's
one.
around the contested game and finals. And is that where his eyesight would be with the 3 talls, knowing that you're going to be
goes
going
in.
long all the time? It allows Toby Green and Devon Smith to have a point to go to regularly in finals.
See, I would say that Toby Green happens to be 183 centimetres, and you would think of him as a small forward. He takes overhead marks.
Of course he does, yeah.
He plays like, I'm not going to put a height on it, but he plays like a medium-sized, tall, aerial.
He's a
type
dangerous
forward.
matchup. He needs a marking defender on him, and if you've got Lobb, Patton, and Cameron up there, not many side structure.
You've
up
exhausted
with 4
3 of you.
That's right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Can I ask you quickly, Sando? Collingwood's had some really good form against GWS. What area, like when you trawl through and you do your opposition, because your last two encounters, Collingwood knocked GWS off big time last year and got pretty close. What is it, the one thing? How do you stop them? What's the one area you really got to focus on?
Without knowing it exactly, because it would be a bit of subjective analysis of it, but the numbers that consistently stack up for Collingwood v GWS has been the contested ball differential, which it sounds a bit bland. It's what you hear most coaches talk about when they talk about finals, John Owen, success in finals, but it's been the ability to match them in the contest, I think, and that's difficult to do because we've talked about their talent.
Yeah.
And if they get the ball outside, Scully, Kelly, those runners off halfback, Williams, Wilson, but if you can match them inside and get the ball territory, it goes a long way to having success.
So I want to pose the question then, we'll come back to that one, but pose the question then, if you're coaching against the Giants, they've got 12 out at the moment, right? If you're coaching against them and say, right, we've got to nullify one of them, stop one of them, which you're essentially saying he's their most important to their winning, who would you stamp out?
Toby Green is my one. Yeah, without question. He's got the elite ability to get up with the endurance. He gets back. He's everywhere. He's busy. He marks. He crumbs. He's the one for me that you've got to stop.
I like Kelly. He's taken his game to another level this year, and we played him about a month ago. They got us by 3 points, and he was the standout. His ability to break the lines. He's got speed, classy, great decision maker.
Staggering that they're almost flag favourites and nearly had to put the property steward in the pocket last week.
Yeah.
But
Who's yours?
Dylan Shield. And I'll show you some vision why. And this was unbelievable. I'm watching this on my couch at home and I thought, look at the contest here. You'll see him in the screen just there. So he's 40 metres out. The ball goes out to the wing. Any good midfielder will just cruise up the middle. But watch what GWS do when they come inside. So no West Coast players push any through the corridor. And look at the speed and power that he's provided from 40, and he finishes 40 metres inside his 50 and kicks the goal. That enormous running, and he did that time and time again. So he was going from arc to arc at full tilt. So I'd hate to see what his 9 metres per second was from his GPS point of view, but he's the most valuable player in that team for mine.
So for me, it's Dylan Shield again, but because you've said him, I'll go somewhere else. I'll say Jeremy Cameron, but because I think Shield, the only person who runs as hard as him, and I mean going north-south, straight, goal to goal, is Dangerfield. He doesn't get it quite as much as Dangerfield, but when in motion, he runs as powerful as Dangerfield, maybe even a little quicker. And he's he's a better kick than Dangerfield on the run as well. So we're talking about a team who are scraping through with all those narrow wins. They're second on the ladder. They've got 12 automatic selections out, and we've come up with 4 different who their most important player is.
That's right. And that's why the challenge is there for Essendon, isn't it? To, where do they go? Do they back themselves in to use their own spread and energy and everything that we've seen over the last month from this side, or do they try and lock down on a couple? That's where the question mark becomes so difficult when playing such a powerful young unit in GWS.
They showed great signs 2 weeks ago. They got nutted by the Tigers last weekend, but great signs 2 weeks ago at Etihad Stadium. So they're not without their chances, but the Giants are so good. Talk about the giant of this world, Nathan Brown, and he could have talked to us about goal kicking as well, because relatively selfish in his day. Didn't like to give too many away.
Gave a few off every now and again.
When you're getting tackled.
Yes. You have to have 3 hanging off you. But
Very good.
The obvious one was Richard. I mean, I can't handball to him. He misses just as many as anybody. So, look, this weekend, we've had our special on round 10, which was 24 and up. So when your side gets 24 points up, we pay it out.
How'd that go?
Went very, very well. So the one game where we got really cleaned out was Gold Coast. So they got 24 points up, Gold Coast on Melbourne. So we pay out all the Gold Coast punters. Then Melbourne come back and obviously win that game, but we pay the Melbourne punters out as well. So I think 8 minutes into the last quarter, we'd paid out both sets of punters. Obviously, a big clean out for Sportsbet, obviously, but the punters very, very happy. So
Did people walk around the office just shaking their head? Why did we do that?
There's no one in there on the weekend.
Oh, right, okay.
No, they do. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but you've got to give the punters something. You've got to be fair. So the punters something. Now, Port Adelaide and Hawthorn, big money on Port Adelaide. You'd think after Hawthorn last week, but they opened at $5, the Hawks, but small ground last week, they play well. Get out in the big ground, the punters think that Hawthorn will run over, Port Adelaide will run over the top of Hawthorn, and then you've got Geelong and Adelaide. Geelong won the last 4 against Adelaide. Now, I like Geelong. Now, they're $2.10 at the moment. Adelaide are coming into about $1.70. I think down there, I reckon that's really good value. They're one side Geelong, who don't mind throwing around their back end to hold one as a quarterback to stop that one over the back that Adelaide gets. So they've done that the last 4
Mackie
times.
got that last week.
Very, very good side, Geelong, at that. What else have I got for you? A little bit of Brownlow talk. Brownlow talk. Josh Kelly has been the best backed over the last couple of weeks. He's gone from $33 into 16. And our biggest loss so far would be either Clayton Oliver, or we had one punter have $2,000 on Tip and Wardy, and that would be about a $500,000 payout at this point. So, but certainly
hope
Josh
he gets
Kelly,
there now.
big money on Josh Kelly.
And how much of a Josh Kelly to get to the Kangaroos?
That's about 1.1 million, I would have thought. Dustin Martin, Josh Kelly. Geez, I'd have to go Dusty.
Brownie, thanks for joining us, mate. Brownie, Nathan Brown from Brownie from Sportsbet. Thanks, mate. Let's go to a break, boys. We'll be back with the rest of the games. We'll talk about the Hawks and the Power after the break. .360 up next. Jossie Jenkins is joining Robbo and Jared, so should have a bit of fun watching that one. Did he seem a bit flat to you when Robbo was walking through before?
Yeah,
Didn't
because
want
there's
to
no
stay?
food in here, I think.
He's a good man, our Robbo. Hey, Gold Coast take on the West Coast Eagles. They fought last week, couldn't get over the line. They lost their star goal kicking power right up the front, so it was always going to be tough for them to kick the winning goals at the end. Ablett looks to come back in. Apparently, Jacob has said he only plays at Metricon and Shanghai, so he's a show to come back in.
Oh, don't you love it? Two.
Well, he's got to come
I know
back
they were
in.
bad. I know they were bad last week, but I'm not. There's times when they blow teams apart. I mean, they really took it to Melbourne.
Their first
for
half
half a
was
game, and
very
then,
good, yeah.
And then the trapdoor fell open, and then it blew apart for them. But they struggled to contain them, Melbourne, there for a while. I don't think they're a terrible, terrible team.
Oh, they're not.
Yeah,
No,
I
not
think
for
the
me.
week before against Port Adelaide and Shanghai, I'll get that one in. They were really negated off half-back. They really get their drive off half-back. And Melbourne, I didn't think did any work early in that game we spoke about to deny them their run, and they got some free ball. And Melbourne, as you said, really struggled with that. And half-time, Goody said, we're going okay, we're just butchering the ball a little bit. And then they just sharpened it up and just went bang.
Well, what
did
they
they-
will be, Derm, is Thompson. I'm not sure where he's at, whether he's back or whether he might be another week or so. But the fact that now Josh Kennedy is out of West Coast side with the calf Achilles issue, then that makes life a little bit easier for Stephen May, I think, who is taking up the bulk of the work. Leslie's doing a little bit of good work down there at the moment, improving player. But when May and Thompson together, they structurally stand up a lot better, Gold Coast. And that's what they missed last week against
What do
Melbourne.
they do? They've got 3 intercept backmen in the back line. Do they move McGovern forward?
I'd love you saying that. That's what I was going to say. I'd love him forward.
See, I don't know if he's got great forward craft, but by God, he can catch it.
Yeah, well, that's the
Get
challenge.
it near
yeah.
him, put it in the air and just get it near him.
But it's predictable too, and that's what you need in your forward line. He creates some predictability around where the ball is going to drop, because you know with him it never goes over the back. So then all of a sudden, other smaller type forwards for West Coast know exactly where to head.
You jump into the Suns coaching box right now. You plan, you think, right, McGovern, they like him back as an intercept marker. What if they play him forward? What would you do?
Yeah, you would have those strategies set up. You'd have almost like a what if meeting going into the game, where you'd have all the potential strategy or systems changes that would happen during the game. But I would leave it as it is. I would go with a smaller forward line this week. I would still go with Darling, Lacroix, Hill, Cripps, Jetta.
Well, Lacroix was a late withdrawal, so he'll come back in.
So Lacroix comes back into the side. But I think leave McGovern where his strengths are right at the moment. And I know you can sometimes pinch hit with players going to different ends of the ground and get a great reward from it. But I would try and settle that back six down if I was Simo.
And the other thing I'd do, I reckon it's a great, if you can draw a positive, Sando, from it, throw a shoey down there one out for 5 minutes and isolate him and just rotate a couple of guys there with the bigger bodies. We see a Robbie Gray go down there and we see a Dusty Martin have some great success. One out for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Put a shoey down there or a gaff or so. Who would deceptively be strong in a marking contest or is clever forward?
Oh, Sando and I have both gone for the Suns there.
What do you see then? You've picked the Suns. Why have you picked them? Because West Coast don't travel well.
West Coast. I went for West Coast to finish second this year. I'm a rap for them what they've done and introducing Sam in there. But to me, the games they win, star power in the top 4, 5 or 6 players gets them across the line. And their biggest element of star power for kicking goals is out. And they're on the road. They're not good on the road anyway. And the Gold Coast, and I don't think they're a great tackling team in their forward half. And the one thing the Gold Coast Suns love to do is all those little Mises to pieces, tiny little, I almost said something ants. They come out of that back line like slingshotted. They are so fast. Sard, Harbrow, they are seriously quick. And if Ablett flows down in there as well, they'll come out at express pace. I don't know if the Eagles can counteract
And plus, they're finally home too. After playing in China and Alice Springs, they finally get back to Metricon, you know. So there's a great opportunity for them to use that speed. They play Metricon pretty well. That run and punch off a half-back could be really damaging to the West Coast.
Now, we're going to discuss the Power and the Hawks next, but has anybody mentioned that the Suns played in Shanghai?
No,
never
did
heard,
they?
didn't hear it.
I thought it was in New Potty Pop On. Break.
Jonas did the job on Lynch in Shanghai, so Hayne probably has been mentioned, but Port Adelaide haven't played in Victoria, but they've been in China before tonight.
Brad Ebert, last man into Shanghai from Port Adelaide's point of view, won the medal in Shanghai. First man out of Shanghai, back to Sun Leo. So we mentioned Shanghai, Richo. So Young, who missed in Shanghai, probably a little unlucky, Ken Hinkley says, to miss in Shanghai. Well, Justin Westhoff, he kicked a goal in Shanghai a couple of weeks ago. So Colin Jasny, whose brother played against Port in Shanghai. It's a ripper, 3-state in China. He's got his first tonight.
Back at the league team's desk here, just well timed. Port Adelaide taking on Hawthorn this weekend, and it's called league teams. Teams are in, the only two. Hawks, no change. Port Adelaide, no change. Good chat. There we go. All right, let's keep moving on here. No changes there. We saw the Hawks last week. They were allowed to play the way that they wanted to play. If you're coaching against them, I mean, there's always the way you want to play and how much do you give away as to the way that the opposition are prepared to allow you.
Well, Sydney were terrific last time they played at denying them the inside corridor. You'll see here, this is the last play, an inside 45 kick, and Sydney just guarding grass there. So they're the number one wing team in the competition, have been for a number of years. Look where they go, Tom Mitchell there, just the 45. They're just taking grass the whole time, but the lazy defence of Sydney through the middle of the ground and allows Ruffy, who was in that play before when I said they were guarding grass, just creeps down, gets to a good spot, finishes the goal, and they win by 6 points.
From that vision there, Zach Jones probably justified in the way Sydney played, because when Mitchell came through, he backed off instead of coming up and closing the space of Mitchell, which you need to do in some ways against Hawthorn to make them rush disposal, rather than having time and space to continually hit up.
And on the back of that play, that was when Mills missed the shot on goal. Yep. And you would think if you're in front at that stage of the game, you would have gone, I've got to defend hard here. Yep. But their body language in that last minute and a half was, we've missed the opportunity. He's still in front.
So they'll have to defend around the middle of the ground against Port Adelaide. It's the way they played last week against the Cats. They are seriously tough team around the ball.
Well, looks like Porter got their run back, doesn't it? When you look at their midfield with Wines and Boak and Polak, Ebert, who's playing in a milestone game, I think he plays 200 this week. Yep. So it feels like Porter got that really hard running from contest to contest. They're outnumbering around the ground. They've got some great young kids. You know, young Pau Pepper, who we coach, Jono, is having a fantastic season. I like the form of Impey. So this is going to be a cracking game.
The thing with Ebert, he's one of those players, you can send him out there and play midfield, and like most midfielders, he runs a bit wide of the other and whatever, he will crash in and get it. And he'll get his possessions. I reckon his great games are when they've said to him, go out and play on him. And you take him down, get the ball yourself, but you take him down. Johnson, that bloke. And he goes out there with a mission. To me, the bloke you would send a mission to, and I know he's probably a better runner than him, but if you can stop him getting away from him at the stoppage, Isaac Smith allowed Hawthorn to play the game they wanted last week, because Sydney put out their zone defence, sometimes man on man, but mainly their zone defence, and Smith ran so hard. His shifts defences. So you've got to take away his will to run. We see what he does here. His breakneck urgency when he's running from, same again, north-south, is phenomenal. So he's come from the back pocket there.
And he had 30 disposals, which he hasn't since he was about 6. So giving him that much ball on a small ground, as you said, Sando, they just got it on their own terms.
I think Pollock's in great form to take Isaac Smith. I think he's
Pollock?
Yeah, I think so. I think the way that he's playing at the moment is back to his best, and his numbers are great. He's running the lines as well as Isaac Smith, so that could be a great little matchup if that unfolds. Because Hawthorn, with loss of Brad Hill, don't really have that secondary hard runner that they did have in the past, because
they got one, Billy Hartung, but he's not
getting a game, and they're still trying to improve others to play that secondary run role, because they used to own the wings outright, Hawthorn, with the two gut runners that they had.
And what the domino effect is that we touched on it Friday night is Tom Mitchell has 50 disposals and they go, is it a good game, is it not a good game? Put Brad Hill on the outside with Isaac Smith and a Billy Hartung. He's had the best game you've ever seen in your life. So it's that outside run which has hurt Hawthorn, but Sydney just gave it to him on a platter.
The thing about Hawthorn that we could never get the ball off of, when they're at their best, they would just kick the ball from contest to contest.
You had to defend every kick, didn't you?
You would never get the ball off them, but at the moment now you just feel like if you can break down that initial chain, keep the ball out of Smith's hands, he's their most damaging outside runner now. That's just feels like that's the way you can get them. But you got to respect Hawthorn still with the way that they can maintain possession. Their time in possession, keeping the ball in their forward half, is you got to break that down somehow.
Because the one before we move on is when Collingwood played them, you couldn't get the ball away from them. You made some errors turning the ball over to them in the first 35, 40 minutes of the game. But then when you forced them down the line, which they didn't want to do, soaked up their targets, the game swung.
Yeah, well, it was 6-0 when we played them. They absolutely smashed us early in that contest. We had 3 inside 50s at the 20-minute mark of the first quarter. We just couldn't get the ball off of them. Yeah. They just were so measured in the way that they moved the footy. So it wasn't until we ramped up our I guess, defensive pressure and intent, and that was through 22 players having a shift in mindset that this game's got to be played in a balance, that we were able to sort of break them down. But you've got to respect them still. I can't wait for this game. This is going to be an absolute belter.
Port Adelaide as well. Let's have a look at the way their key defenders go about it.
Well, they're number one team for one-on-one, so I just want to show a little bit of vision. I call it the smother cover. The best in the competition. I've watched them all year.
Sounds like a hairpiece.
Yeah, it does. You might need one in a couple of years. But you'll see here, the man that's at the below of the contest here, he knows he's not marking that ball, so all he's got to do is engage where the drop zone's going to be with that player, and then the guy comes over the top. So they do that on the wings very, very well.
Same
on dump
again.
kicks. And down here in defence, he's just got to take that player out. So all within the rules, but he knows that there's support there in the air. So what they do is, as you know, Sando, when the dump kick comes out, they think they're going to mark it. The Port Adelaide player has no intention of marking that at all. He just wants to make sure that this guy's engaged because he knows they're coming over the top. And they do it so well, and they retain the ball on the wings and defence.
They're improved down there, haven't they, when you look at Jonas, Homsch...
Their profile's really good at what they score and what they get scored against.
That's right. I think the 3 of those guys are doing a fantastic job at the moment. And their forwards are helping because they're putting good pressure on. They can compress at the right time and be ready for that dump kick. But when they are in one-on-one situations, they're not getting outmarked. The balls are coming direct to a position where Hartlett's getting back or Pittard's getting back first or Burn-Jones to help clean the mess up.
And you also mentioned Sam Powell-Pepper, what impact he's having through the midfield, which releases, if they're in good running form, Robbie Gray just spends more time up forward. He's
Trengove as well. Trengove now has gone forward because of the 3 tools that are doing the job, and Westhoff isn't being thrown around so much. He's forward mid-wing, sort of playing that role, so it's helping them.
Yeah, well, Trengove has been thrown around by necessity the last couple of seasons. You know, we've seen him in the ruck, we've seen him down at in defence with Homsch and also Jonas out. But now he's playing, I think, his best footy where he feels most comfortable, and that's as a sort of roaming half forward, and we've seen that with Westhoff as well. But you're right about Robbie Gray. I think he's such a dangerous player in that forward half, and he can pitch it on ball, can go in and win clearances, but that matchup is critical. If Hawthorn can get that matchup right. And the other one is Dixon. Dixon's starting to play some really good footy and looks like an important player in that forward line.
Well, Robbie Gray, just quickly, not only is he hitting the scoreboard, he's 22 score assists inside 50. So he's 3 more than any player in the competition.
He's a phenomenal talent, isn't he? All the facets he contributes in. Their opponents from last week were the Cats. Cats take on Adelaide, so they'll travel down to playing corridor footy down at, what's it called now down there?
Simmons still.
Simmons House. Yeah, Mark Simmons. sorry, Simo, I forgot it's your stadium all of a sudden. Lonergan looks like he'll probably come back in for the Cats, and they're going to need to tie down the Adelaide small forwards. They've never been that good at knocking over small forwards, a fleet of small forwards from the opposition. How do they go about it?
Well, I actually think they've got the right matchups this week. I really like, Buse, Tui, Guthrie, and even Mackie. I think he can play on those, like Malira, Betts and Cameron. I know these Adelaide small forwards are in great form. They've got elite speed. But I just think the matchup, the Geelong high defenders on the Adelaide high forwards, I think it actually suits Adelaide a bit this week. I actually think it suits Geelong this week.
Really? So I've looked at it over the years, like the last 2-3 years, and thought they just... And I know Busey's testing when he was a junior, he had elite agility. But to see them out on the ground, it's to me, it's as though the agile forwards give them real curry.
Well, will they look at Ruggles then potentially to come back in and help with one of those, and you have Buse and Ruggles together?
Who wins, Adelaide or Geelong, Robbo?
Also, College Asney, you mentioned Ruggles. He can play. He can play tall and small as well. So I think they've got plan A, plan B, but. How good's Adelaide's attacker? And they're ranked 1 in the competition. They're scoring almost 130 points a week. Malira, Betts, Cameron. This is an exciting mix up there.
And their back six is going not too bad either. Collectively across the ground, Adelaide have become a pretty powerful team.
Mitch Duncan, we speak so much about Dangerwood, and we always think who's going to be. No one's ever going to be equally as good as those two, but Mitch Duncan.
That's a great combination, Dangerwood. That's awesome. I like that.
Somebody else made it up. I just copied it. Yeah, I'm not claiming it, but his ability to break the lines. Now, poor young Powell Pepper. He's a beast, isn't he? But he can't close the distance there on Mitch Duncan.
He's had a terrific year, Mitch Duncan, and we spoke about how good Shields from defensive 50 to forward 50.
But he blew him away on that.
He blew him away, but his two-way running's been enormous this year. And
shanked the shot.
He did shank the shot. But,
look at this one here, Dicko, and this goes to show in terms of education that you don't need to sprint the whole time. You just got to work.
Speed,
you've got to cruise speed. It's a great terminology because you just got to work. He understands this situation here, where the kick out is going to go from Guthrie, and he just works to win the ball. He doesn't really change pace too much. He gets in that cruise speed mode and gets to the right spots to win possession. And do you find players these days, especially key mids, are in more cruise mode then, just to get around the park in the right spots?
Yeah, I think so. And it's all about the pattern that you run and the angles that you run. You look at Sam Mitchell, who just seems to play that centre square, in most AFL games so smart. You throw back a generation to Greg Williams. He didn't have blistering speed, but he just covered the ground so well. He played in that sort of cruise speed mentality and just worked the angles
Josh
really
Kennedy,
well.
Sydney.
Got to as many contests as he possibly could, not through sprinting, but just by putting himself in the right position consistently.
Scott Selwood, does he go to Rory Sloane? It seems to be the take guard.
Would you send him straight to Rory Sloane?
I would, yeah, I would. I'd see how that went first, but it's mouth-watering Sloane v Dangerfield too, isn't it?
Yeah,
if we can organise that matchup, that'd be fantastic.
Well, with the form that Dangerfield's in, Selwood, of course, and Mitch Duncan, you'd think they'd be able to handle Sloane and the two Crouch boys, and it'd be a great contest between those three. So if that did unfold, where does Scott Selwood go? Does he go to the wing? Does he go back to help out one?
Yeah, he could do that.
One of these smalls.
He could actually play a high half back role. It's interesting when you match these two midfields up. When you look at Dangerfield, the two Selwoods, Duncan, Blitzavs, Menegola, but then Adelaide too with Sloane, the two Crouches, Duncan, Atkins, and McKay's in good form too at the moment. So it's going to be a great contest.
You got to let it go.
Yeah, I would.
We'd like to see it that way, wouldn't we?
Well, would you lean on Bucks at a stage if you were on the, we're going to let this go and just see how this plays out for our enjoyment?
I can suggest those sort of things, Dicko, but yeah, and most coaches always default to defence.
Yeah. How can you dispute those figures? He needs a target, this boy, Scott. So he's had 34 tackles in 2 weeks. He actually wants to be like a limpet. He just wants to get on the side.
You know what?
Bang.
The biggest challenge for the Cats is to keep Adelaide, which is very difficult to do, under 80 points because with Chris Scott, they are 70-0 when they've kept the side under 80 points. So
70-0.
70-0, which is a ridiculous number, isn't it? How good is that?
So in 70 games where they've kept the opposition under 80 points,
they've won every one. Yep. Good luck doing that with Adelaide, though, because they're the high scoring team.
124 points.
That's
yeah,
right.
This is the best offence in the competition at the moment.
That was all your research too, I gather?
No, but we'll go with it.
Did you get another text message? Oh, right.
Sando, look, Roosie should be feeling pretty nervous right now. Thanks for joining us, mate, and good
Thanks,
luck
boys.
for the
Thanks a lot.
weekend.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
360 up next, boys.